Well, Jesse Lambert, we might as well get her going.
Sir.
Welcome back. Episode number 2 for you.
Yeah.
Recurring guest.
Thanks for having me back.
Man, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Looking forward to this.
Me too.
Do a quick little introduction. I'm Jesse Lambert. I've got here some notes. What do the notes say? It says you were on episode 43 back in April 2022.
Wow.
A little while ago now.
A little while ago. We're heading into
1 year,
2024. It's hard to
8
believe.
months. Yeah. Back then, it was just strictly audio. So this is kind of cool with the video aspect of it all.
Yep.
So we were kind of leading up to all of this and mentioned that it'd be kind of cool to do. I'm going to show you a couple of videos of the promo at that time. What I used to do is just go on TikTok and do all the different pictures and put some music in there. And that was my way of trying to do the promotion.
Yep.
So let's take a look at what it's like. It's almost like going back in the past.
Yeah.
The only problem is it wasn't that long ago, really, if you look at it that way. But it's kind of neat to look at how things have progressed.
Yeah. Let's hit 88 miles per hour.
I got to move that over. Boom. Let's open this up. You ready for this? This is epic. I love the music. That was awesome.
You did that one a solid for sure.
Oh, man. It's, look at us there.
Yeah. Just a
We
bunch
look
of
like
young bucks.
Yeah. Oh, man. Everything else pretty much looks fairly similar.
Yeah.
And then I got one more here because I went back for a visit and then you were kind of in the back messing around. So I took a small video of that. Let's check that one out.
Yeah.
That's what this good old boy's gonna go out working on. Working on, coming to Jesus, kicking the Bible, wrestling with our roots, trying to turn off mama's tears and fill our daddy's boots, shutting up our pride, fixing bridges we burn, learning how to live and learn, keeping our demons down and our trucks up and running, loving them angels sitting pretty in the middle of them, fighting with the man in the mirror till we gone. Yeah, that's what all those good old boys gonna go out working on.
I love it.
Very nice.
Yeah, pretty cool. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So for anybody out there listening or watching, if you haven't, I guess the listener only heard the music, but you are a bladesmith and the owner of JD Knives and Custom Works in Fort St. John, BC.
Correct. Yeah.
And that was basically what that last episode was all about was, I guess, forging. At that time, Forged in Fire, the TV show was huge, a lot bigger than it is now.
Yeah. It's fading.
And it seems to be, but you've got that skill set of forging. We talked about how to sharpen. You got a whole array of different stuff in front of us here that we're even going to kind of touch on again. But that episode was kind of cool because don't think too many people were really knowledgeable about forging, what a Damascus blade is, meteorology. I think we're talking about some sharpening. I mean, there's 3 hours I think we had on the whole audio end of things.
Yeah, we got
Smashed
carried away,
it out
I
of
think.
the park, that's for sure. But having you back on as a repeat guest isn't going to be just about that. You have really opened things up into some really cool courses that I'm wanting to really get into here right away because it's pretty cool what you've got going on now. Why don't we just start out with kind of you introducing or explaining what those courses are and kind of how you've expanded from forging and some of the other stuff that you're making with some of the leather work and whatnot to these courses that you're getting into.
Yeah, so one of the big things too that we talked about last time was really the inspiration behind where JD Knives got started, even talking about the namesake of the business itself, JD standing for John Danahay, my grandfather. And something that we've been planning for some time, and I've always had in my heart and in my soul, really, was the same thing that he endeavored to do with me. He always tried to teach. And so the ethos or the spirit behind these courses is keeping alive or even passing on to the next generation or even our current generation some of the things that we're losing. And so while these are made to be palatable and something that is easily consumed by the consumer, really the heart of it is to be able to have some of the principles and fundamentals of what underlies these underneath these courses that teaches us how to work with our hands again. I tell my kids all the time that our number one safety tool is the gray matter between our ears.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And I know and not to stand on a soapbox against safety protocols and safety mechanisms and stuff like that, like, to speak rudimentarily, the guard on a angle grinder. But really what it's prevented us or allowed us to do is not ever to think for ourselves again. We put safety protocols and safety guards on everything. Yeah. And I think that really cascades not only onto power tools, but really into how we conduct ourselves. And speaking pure, I got to be careful how I say this, of course, because we do believe, of course, in protecting those in the courses and as well as ourselves with the safety equipment. But so speaking purely as a metaphor, really we're trying to take the safety guards off things. And we're trying to put back in the hands the ability to, for example, fix something. My kids, I love it that my children, when they, especially my 5-year-old, she's turning 6 here shortly, and she keeps reminding me, but my currently 5-year-old.
Your 6-year-old.
Yeah, my 6-year-old.
You're 6 and 3 months and a half.
She says 5 3/4. She's very careful to tell me 5 3/4, Dad. But I love it when something breaks and she goes, "Hang on, I'll go bring it to Dad.
Nice.
He can fix it."
Yeah.
Right. And like I'm not trying to puff myself up at all by saying that. But and some things I don't know how to fix, but I'll try.
Yeah.
And I love that's the mindset that my children have. If even if I can't fix it, just the fact that I've been able to really make sure that they know that, hey, we don't need to throw it away. We can try and fix it.
Yep.
Right. And
absolutely. Your teeth, not to interrupt, but you're kind of instilling, I think, not even just a skill set, but the ability to think differently, an approach, problem solving, critical thinking, all of those abilities to be able to improve on thinking on your feet in a moment in a way that's going to improve your survivability or even just your day-to-day quality of life, because now you're not dependent on every other component. Mm-hmm. You're able to do it yourself, down to fundamentals, whether it's cooking, cleaning, like what you're saying, maybe repair, your ability to be able to just kind of manage day-to-day household life, work.
Yeah. So one of the things I bring up with my kids often is the fact that when we were growing up or when we were doing the wood out of my grandfather's property there, he had a 5-ton truck and the thing didn't have any brakes. Huh. And I mean, you couldn't reach the pedals. And the coming downhill into the property, you had to come downhill and take a 90-degree. Oh, no power steering, of course, right?
Oh, perfect. So
you had to sometimes you had to pick a tree and just run that thing into it. You know what I mean? To stop, right? So, but the reason I bring that up is because it seemed at some point you got to a place where it's like you couldn't throw anything at us that we couldn't just figure out on the fly.
Yeah.
Right. It was like, oh, I know what to do here because I've been in a worse situation than this.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's what I mean by
Yeah.
like taking off the safety guards. And of course, I got to be careful. We're not going to throw anybody into a 5-ton truck without brakes. But that mindset of let's push the limits
For sure.
of whatever it is, you know, whether it's woodworking or a Bauer course or whatever. And then let's figure out our, you know, not where our comfort space, just get wherewithal.
Yeah. The safety part, let's touch on that because that's a hard one to try, and we might as well just put that, I guess, address it because it does have, I think, a core reason as to where the value is when it comes to teaching these courses. It's not to, I guess, offset safety or undermine the value in safety. Mm-hmm. If anything, you're shoring it up. By teaching a lot of these courses, it seems like anything is only learned and lost within one generation. So whatever that is, a 10-year cycle or whatever, you know, that cycle is. And then people don't realize how fundamental it is to be able to have certain skill sets. So in maybe some of the courses that you're offering, it's not just a skill in your ability to build something, but it's your, like we were saying earlier, the approach on something. We should have guards and labels on a lot of things. I think there's a lot of value in having all of that in place, but not to the point of its own detriment, not to take away the application and accountability of certain users. You got to read the labels. Like we're at a point now where people don't even read labels.
Yeah.
And so then what do? You got to put a guard in there. And that's a thing now where you got to put a guard and you got to stop people. So they got to break out of their, whatever that is, that mindset, and physically, intentionally remove that guard to shift the lever or not get caught up in something. So what's the next step after that? Well, now you need a procedure, and are you qualified to operate that? And it goes to, I mean, at what end? Yeah. And there's good value in having those checks and balances in place. Mm-hmm. But when it's at the point of where now whole society, I guess, in general, they don't know how to be able to function basic life skills as a result of it. You got to call the plumber, you got to have the electrician, you got to have the mechanic, you got to have, you know, there's always a guy and then a ticket or an endorsement to qualify that person. And then where's the quality control? A lot of times it's not even all that great.
Yeah. This is where we start getting labels on Tide Pods, do not eat. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Do not consume this. It's too colorful.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the big things, and one of the things you just said, was my grandfather. He dropped out of grade 7. That man was one of the most well-educated men I've ever met. And I've seen him go toe-to-toe with a, you know, wet behind the ears, arrogant, university, book smart person. And the university guy, fresh out of the highest education, just gets wiped out by a grade 7 educated man. But back in the day, we weren't held accountable to the certificates we had. We were held accountable to our experience, our wisdom, the knowledge and how we applied it. And it provided a room for us to grow. It provided us a room for us to be accountable to and gave us a moral standard in which we could base ourselves off of. Yeah. And we've really lost that, right? Because we like my kids, they'll ask a question, and before they're even finished, they'll go, I know, figure it out, right? Because we got to give that room for people to make mistakes, right? And when we have the safety guards on them, we become a slave to those. And again, I'm glad you said that, you know, we got to touch upon it, the safety part, and that we're not trying to undermine it. But to really talk about that is to remove the safety guards is to not take away our protection, but to give us room to actually exercise neuroplasticity, that critical thinking. And so that's what I mean by remove the safety guards. Is like, you know, there are going to be times when a guard may be, and now I speak literally of a machine, a guard may actually pose more danger because you're working around it, and you're not optimizing the way that you're using the tool because a guard is in your way, and it could actually produce a risk. So, but that's that part of that critical thinking where we need to figure out, is it safer to not use the safety guard? Right. So and of course that requires a lot of intuition, and individual circumstances all vary, but yeah.
Hey, culture has gotten to a point where a lot of the things that we have right now, the niceties, I guess, so to speak, the air quote niceties, has in a lot of ways made us a lot further ahead as far as, standard of living and a lot of other things that go with it. But culturally, we've lost a lot in that whole process. And I think it's left us more vulnerable in a way because we're dependent on all the niceties, and that's a standard that is required, and you take that away, and now it's a threat to survival in a lot of ways, right? Because now we don't have the ability to be able to do what we need to without that dependency on whatever that tool or that electronic is. And I think a lot of people think we're smarter nowadays. They always look back at history and they're like, well, we know better now and we're smarter. And it worked back then under those rules at that time for them, but we're better, smarter, and more advanced now. And that's not always the truth, is it?
Sometimes it can go so far over it collapses on itself, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And like the do not eat Tide Pods is kind of,
It's outlandish, but that's real. It's a real thing.
That's a real label. Yeah. We call these smartphones, but really what they've done is, and I mean, even on a scientific level, these phones no longer require us to use our frontal cortex, the part that's responsible for creativity.
Yeah.
Right? Because it does it for us. And it's the same thing with, parents being overprotective with their children. And I mean, we can look at it in good bacteria and bad bacteria. If we over sanitize, we're getting rid of good bacteria, which protects us from bad bacteria. If we overprotect, we're getting rid of the same mechanisms that teach us the fight or flight and how to properly, balance that within our psyche. If we overuse a phone, we starve our creative portion of our brain, and those neuroplasticity, those cells die. And sure, you can re-exercise things, but they're gone, right? Like I watch, and I keep bringing up my children, mainly because I'm a happy father. I'm very, I'm pleased with my kids, so I don't mind bringing them up. But I watched them sit there, and we don't allow, my kids do not have devices. And I watched them sit there, and they're inventing a game amongst themselves, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to be this," and and they come up with a new rule, or they come up with a new way to do something, right there on the fly, right? And comes over a neighbor kid, and I know full well it's nothing but iPads and nothing but iPhones and stuff like that. And we're talking about the creative process, right? And I remember looking out the window, and he was going like this, looking at him as they're just creating things on the fly.
Really? He just stunned?
And he's going like,
how are you doing that?
Like, how do you do that? That was the look on his face. Like, how do you even do that, right? So, but point of saying all that is whenever we overindulge in anything, I think, whether it's overprotectiveness or whether it's something that does the frontal cortex work for us, we starve out that part of our brain, and we lose it, and we bring it back, thank God, but it's lost for the moment. I was just going to bring something up.
Well, in the meantime, growth lives in the realm of uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And if you're not uncomfortable, if you're not grinding it out, if you're not learning, and that's on every level, you touched on, the autoimmune, like germs. Mm-hmm. If your immune system isn't being challenged, it isn't adapting, it isn't growing, it isn't getting stronger. Same with your brain, down to humans need to grind to be able to grow. Mm-hmm. That you need that resistance. You need that ability to be able to suffer just a little bit, to have that appreciation. Basically, it's almost humanity. You know what I mean? You need humans for humanity. You need a certain amount of suffering, and it sounds bad when I'm saying it out loud. The suffering is good, but I mean, there's some truth. I hope people are understanding. I think the point I'm trying to make with that, though, right?
It's real though, but see, the thing about that is too, it's not like you see that everywhere in nature. Like a pine cone seed opens under heat.
Yeah.
So it's the forest fire that actually resows the forest, right? Absolutely. A lobster cannot molt unless he drops to the depths of the ocean. So a lobster literally can't grow unless it has the pressures of the depths, right? Our muscles don't grow without resistance.
Absolutely.
I mean, you see it just time and time again. But we've lost the ability to suffer and feel pain. We hate it, right? And of course, why would we? But the thing about it is all of my memories that I remember from growing up, they're not of, like, sure, there's one or two of the good times. Oh, that was so much fun, that trip to whatever, or when we went to Peace Island Park, or when I went to the rodeo with my grandfather, right?
Yeah.
But the true lessons, the things that resonate with me the most and that have shaped me the most, hurt.
Absolutely.
They hurt.
I've always wondered why in nowadays, and this is because the safety thing has been a topic that I've had, like, at work, you know, everybody says is, thank God we got rid of old school. And in some areas, I 100% agree. There are some things that I'm glad that are done away with when it comes to the old school. But why is it that all the older people that kind of lived in the old school don't have PTSD or traumatic, you know, they look back on all that stuff that should have crushed them with fond memories.
Yep.
What is that element? Like, so what are we stripping away that they're looking fondly back on that we're so proud we got away with?
I believe it was obligatory survival. It was get tough or die, right? Like Boy Named Sue. Because if you didn't go and get water, you died of thirst, right? Well, water was 3 miles down the road for the creek, for our U.S. friends. I did that for our U.S. buddies, you know. But that walk also produced like muscles, like that would ensure your survival, really,
Absolutely.
ultimately. And so we've lost the get tough or die because we don't have to get tough. We don't. If we have an owie, go to the hospital. If we didn't grow enough food that year, well, not everybody grows food. They just go to the grocery store. Well, the grocery store is full of products that they've hit up with every single pesticide and GMO and all this to increase productivity, to get more money into their bank account, right?
Yeah.
It's not about survival. It's not, and this is why we don't help our neighbors. Honestly, because they don't need us. They don't, and we don't need them.
So you lost a community and you lost a lot that goes with it. It's erosion on humanity.
It is.
It really.
It is.
You know, another aspect that goes back to that old school that you're talking about now, that I've kind of thought about and I thought was interesting, is there's a certain level of genetic primal instinct in us that we always kind of gravitate to, and I think that's why we glorify a lot of things. If you look at YouTube channels and stuff like that, it's camping. It's, you know, these people that are, you know, survivalists. What is it about all of that is intriguing, that we find so interesting? And it's going back. But
I think it's the thing that goes back and it collapses on itself, right? And very soon we see, after the toilet paper has been wiped off the shelf, we see how fragile it is.
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, okay, I got to stock up. Well, stocking up's not the answer. Okay, well, I got to learn how to camp and survive. I don't know how many times I've heard it in the last year or two. It's like, okay, I know where I'm coming when the world ends, right?
Absolutely. Exactly.
So,
well, people think about it and they want to go camping. They want to learn how to do the survival, but they don't want to put the grind. It goes back to, I don't think, the realization of what that environment is like truly like, where you don't have, it's not a weekend warrior thing, right? Where it's actually a lifestyle, having to chop wood for the wood fireplace that you had to build, you know, and that real raw level of survival, even though it makes a really nice painting on the wall that people love, and it's got that warm, cozy feeling. The reality of living that life is nothing but warm and cozy.
yeah, and I think with and that's part of kind of like what these, you know, courses are about too. It's about doing small inoculations, if we may use that analogy for that lifestyle, because like you said, a lot of people don't realize that you can't just go a weekend here or there in the summer when it's nice and now all of a sudden you're a survivalist, right? No, it's like go out there and build, like, survive in the cold when there's no food and it's not easy and you don't have a cooler full of food, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people will go out there, and I got to be careful. We're talking about a very specific demographic, right? Because there are the people who do go out and do the ultimate survival stuff. But
I don't think that demographic are going to be offended by us talking this
Yeah.
way. I think if anything, they're going to be like, thank God there's someone
Yeah.
talking about this.
truly, but for the rest of us, some of these courses are made to act as small inoculations, to come in and say, not only we're not just gonna make a frying pan, we're gonna, like you said, we're gonna make the stove and then we're gonna make the frying. Like, we're gonna literally make everything. We're gonna smelt down the iron, for crying out loud. And it's like, we have metal smelting courses.
So what are these courses? Let's break it, because I think we need to go over a lot. What are all the courses that you actually offer here?
I don't know if you want to break it into sections and then
Well, let's
talk
go
about
over
some
it,
stuff,
then we can
or
touch on it.
Okay. So some of the things that we have right away, because we're set up for them, and we have the people that we know we can fill out the seating. So I want to give that caveat, because some of these courses that are listed, we cannot facilitate for the number of people, just simply because of tooling and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So that caveat's important, just to make sure that somebody doesn't hear one of these courses and say, oh, I want to do that. It's like, okay, well, we have to wait till a seat minimum
Well,
is
let's
full.
go over, they can always find out which ones are available, because this episode might be, someone's listening to it tomorrow, and then a year from now, might be listening to the same thing. But you've got a hell of a list here, let me tell you, which is pretty cool. I'm gonna be taking some of these courses, and if you want, I can kind of list what you have here.
Yeah, sure. Why don't you pull out what interests you, and we can talk about.
Well, I just bought my wife some moccasins for Christmas. Mm-hmm. Oh, speaking of which, we didn't mention that. Sorry, not to kind of drag it out too long, but this is the last recording for 2023, and it's going to be my first episode release in 2024.
And for that, I'm honored.
Yeah. So, and I've got a gift where I'm going to give you here later on, but for Christmas now, because that's when we're doing this actual recording, is between Christmas and New Year's. I went to 8 Seconds in Fort St. John, and I had to buy my wife moccasins, because for the last, every year I buy her some new moccasins, and that's the first on your list is moccasin making, which is pretty cool, because it's not a machine-made thing. This is where you get to learn how to sew leather, and you've got on here, we can go through all the different pricings and stuff later, but you got charcuterie board. Did I pronounce that right?
Charcuterie, I believe.
Charcuterie. Then you've got, you get into hunting, so PAL, the core, the RPAL, so that's restricted. Fur tanning.
Yeah, so fur on tanning.
Fur on tanning.
Because a lot of people will do a caustic, or it's something that will rot the follicles out of the leather. So it's actually quite a specific skill set to be able to tan a fur, have it pliable and not turn into rawhide, essentially, and keep the fur on. So
you got to shock it, like salt.
Salt is for preservation, I believe, and I don't want to get too deep into this. We do simply because we do bring in people who are experts in their field.
Yeah,
I am not an expert in this, so we do bring in instructors for this.
Gotcha.
Some of the things that we cannot do because we don't have that skill set, so we'll be learning too. But yeah, fur on tanning is it's different than just tanning.
So you're keeping the fur. That's the takeaway. The fur on the hide tanning is basically what you're trying to describe with that.
And it remains integrable. You're not going to have a shedding.
Perfect. Okay,
fur.
so like a throw rug or whatever.
Yeah.
So a Euro mount, taxidermy mounting. This one's cool. Epoxy resin. That's what this table's all about.
Yep.
Yeah. So cutting boards, wine barrel bench.
Yeah, so the wine barrel bench is something that I took as an inspiration from a fellow craftsman down in the Okanagan. He made a chair out of a wine barrel, nothing else, just wine barrel. And so I ended up making a bench, and it's quite cool because the staves are curved as is. So this thing cradles your butt quite well. And we use it for my wife's piano bench.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, no, it's a wine barrel bench, essentially just made using and utilizing the curvature of the staves as they are, with little to no change. Some sanding, some staining, some finishing, some care is definitely taken to do it properly, but they look fantastic.
You're going to have a lot of interest, I think, with this. Yeah. So further on down the list, you got wood lathe class, bow making. That's a super cool one. Mm-hmm. Cedar strip canoe, metal smelting and casting, knife making, blacksmithing, axe making, pickling and canning, and then you've got kids courses here: wooden clock project, wooden robot class, a robot class.
So one of the things that we really, and of course, like I mentioned in the beginning, we really made this palatable for the general consumer. But some of the things that we're planning on really putting into play in a big way is a maker space type of environment where people can come and literally learn how to create the components, milling from raw stock, as well as building circuitry using Raspberry Pis and all that kind of stuff. Like, we'll have to fill some gaps, and not just putting together a kit, but building kits and then putting it together. And part of the wooden robot is for these kids. Now, these would be done within kit formats, right? But they will learn how to solder some circuitry. They will learn how to sand some pieces of wood. Wooden gears, and they'll actually be able to put this together with a piece of circuitry and an on switch or a remote or however we do it.
This is a kids class?
This is a kids class.
You're going to see me in a kids class. Yeah. That seems pretty cool. So to finish off the list here, you got a cutting board class, you got a tree bench,
trebuchet.
Oh, sorry, yeah, trebuchet project. Mm-hmm. Trebuchet, what is that?
So that is a weighted and hinged catapult. Whew.
No way.
Yeah, so different than a catapult. Catapult goes under spring tension.
Yeah.
And then boom. But a trebuchet actually has a 2/3 hinge action with weights.
And then it's got like a sling.
And then a sling.
That kind of goes underneath it. So when it spins, the weight comes up and it takes that momentum like a slingshot.
Yep. And then by the time it gets up to there, it's something like 100x speed. Wow. It's crazy. Of course, we'd make a kid-friendly one. You'd be able to shoot like airsoft pellets or something.
Super cool.
But it'll get the fundamentals of leverage, law of leverage, and all that good stuff.
So and then puzzle game boards. Like, you got a hell of a there's a workload here. That's a lot of different courses. Mm-hmm. My goodness. So it's obviously low-lying fruit when it comes to questions is why and how. Kind of what sparked this? Like, why are you doing all of this now? Because this is a bit of a niche kind of thing that has a theme to it.
Yeah, so going back to kind of the beginning, it's just always been there because this is how my grandfather treated us. He said, "Here's some gloves." He's talking about safety equipment. Here's some gloves. Here's some glasses. Don't chop your hands off. There's the grinder. Do what you want. There's the workshop, right? And it was the same thing with the chainsaw. Like, here's how you operate it properly. Here's how you don't kill yourself. Figure it out. Like, I mean, I oversimplify. Obviously, he made sure we weren't going to cut our limbs off, but there was very much like a figure it out attitude about it, and it allowed us to gain some of these gain questions. It allowed us to gain questions, right? We were put in positions where we had to wonder why. And if we couldn't figure it out ourselves, sheepishly enough, we would say, okay, I can't figure this out. Please help me, kind of thing, right? But it would give room for that. Whereas if we were never put in that position, we would never ask that question, right? And the butterfly effect, right? So a lot of the reason behind this is, one, is to bring a lot of this knowledge, fundamentals, principles back, or keep them alive even. And a lot of it is just to give opportunity as well. One of the big things that we saw with people coming into the shop is the first thing they would do is go like this. Oh, You know, they'd look around to the ceiling and around at all the tools, and I'm talking like CEOs of some of the big oil field companies would come in and they would start talking, man, if I had a shop like this, and I'm thinking to myself, like, you can have a shop like this probably 10 times better than this, right? Yeah. But like, why not? It brought up the question of why don't these people who have the means have a shop like this? Well, the curation is one thing, right? Like, I don't even know where to start is what I heard a lot, right?
With all the information we have nowadays in YouTube and everything else that we're just talking about, we still don't really know how to put it into application.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things for me, I was like, well, you can come here. This is what I would tell people. I said, you come here and I'll just kind of show you this or that. And you can like use some of the tools and whatnot, right? So that birthed kind of the business side of it, where I'm thinking, okay, there's an opportunity here, right? And of course, we're a business. We're in business to make money. So I mean, there's a lot of heart, soul, passion, and charitable nature to this, but there's also a business side of it. So one of the things that really sparked it was having those interactions of people coming in and going, man, if only I had this. And it's like, okay, well, if you come here, at 5 o'clock on a Wednesday,
now you can actually supply a course. Is this a recent interest that you started to see? Like an uptick with people getting a little bit more curious and interested in these particular kind of skills?
I think it's been pretty steady.
Has it? Yeah,
over the years, at least for me anyhow. Me personally, I've always wanted to do this kind of stuff too. So maybe I'm a little biased in the fact that I'm looking for it as well. But I do enjoy teaching myself, like just showing and sharing, and you know what I mean? Maybe even, I had one fellow work for me, and he looked at me. He's like, "You sure do like to impress people, don't you?" I'm like, "Well, who doesn't, right? Like, who wants to underwhelm somebody, right?" But so there is an aspect of that too, where it's cool to see the glint and the spark in people's eyes and go, wow, I didn't know that was possible. I didn't know I could do that. You know what I mean? I thought you could only get that on a store shelf and that kind of stuff. Like, we don't have to obey those rules. We can build whatever we want. You know what I mean? Yeah. If we got the knowledge.
You think it's an age thing? The reason I ask that is because when you're a kid, I'm not too sure too many kids have an interest with teaching, but I think as you get older, you start to see the value and you start thinking about certain things that I think most people don't think of when you're young. What's your legacy? Mm-hmm. What's your what's your fingerprint on things? Like, every time you look at something, you want to have a little piece of you on something. And that's where the teaching and passing skills, knowledge on from one generation to the other becomes a little bit more of an interest. And I think is that like an older generation kind of trait?
I don't actually, quite the opposite actually, I think, because we've done work with the high school and we've done some work experience stuff. And if anything, and if I see the brightness in anybody's eyes, it's those high school students. It's those kids who have an open mind and they believe that anything is possible and all I need is an ability to do it. I remember as a kid myself thinking, I wish I was in a room full of engineers and scientists and biologists and all this stuff where I could just think up anything. Yeah. And they would make it real. And I think as a kid, you have that mindset more than you do as an adult.
But that's learning. That's a learning. That's an inquisitive mindset. That's a curious, like, you're building those skills. But the older generation, like what you're wanting to do now with being able to provide that information, the courses teach people that satisfaction in being able to actually engage in hands-on learning or teaching. Mm-hmm. That's kind of that's a bit of a legacy kind of thing, isn't it?
I think it's a healthy mixture between what you're talking about a legacy and providing something that or learning something that they can then pass on, as well as I see that it excites that kid in people more often than not too, because it reignites like the creativity side of things. At least in my experience, that's what I've noticed. So part of that, I think, being creative, like, it's like this part of your brain that just never fully goes away. You know, like, we may dull it, we may cover it, we may, crowd
stifle it somehow,
but it's easily excited again. Yeah. right? That reignite the fires of creation. Right?
Absolutely.
So
So what made you kind of, it looks like you have a bit of a list here that is this a short form list? Like it looks like you kind of were like, okay, let's throw it all on the board and see what sticks here. But how did you come up with all these different courses? Like what's out of these are the interests that you want to be able to provide?
So there is a degree of throw mud at a wall and see what sticks, more on the business side of anything, because if it were up to the creative side, this list would be 3 times longer. So we wanted to make a list that is something that speaks to the public or that is easily adopted, for sure. But if we could break it up into anything, it's like the taxidermy, Euromount, fur on tanning, PAL core, and our PAL that we do. That was really meant
to go hand in hand almost.
Yeah, and there's it was for giving people the tools, or at least providing a place for people to learn how to become self-sufficient, or people who are already self-sufficient. We're just giving them the platform to easily access it, because there's a lot of people, even ranchers, they butcher their own cattle. Some of them, I've noticed, want to keep their cowhide.
Yeah.
Hang it up on the wall or whatever.
For sure.
So the
cowhide it's so useful that not many people look. It's on everything.
Yeah. So that's the fur on tanning, and they go in hand with the Euromount, the hunters, the taxidermy hunters again. Then we've seen a lot of. So this list really is condensed in order to serve basically three different demographics. One is the people who feel like they have their hands tied and they really need a creative outlet.
Yeah.
2 is we have a great amount of hunters in our area, so we're trying to definitely cater to them. And then the other one is the survivalist, the critical thinking, the building something from scratch, the passing on of knowledge sort of thing, where that's more or less it's almost like our heart, our passion of what we're trying to pass on as a business, and as individuals.
Are these one-day courses? Because just before you answer that, I'm looking at every single one of these, and I've only really seen 1 or 2 of your courses that I could say, oh, well, you could probably encompass most of this in just one day, like the resin or epoxy. You could probably get a huge chunk of that squared away in one day. But like the tanning, axe making, pickling and canning, you might be able to do in one day. But this looks like it'd probably be like a fairly extended lengthy course, something you can build on.
Yeah, so as a carpenter, whenever we went out to a job, we always allowed the first day. We never planned on working. The first day was to go out, get a scope of your work field, make sure you got a good list of all the tools you're going to need, get your head wrapped around it. Day 2 was when you went there and you went to work. Like 7:30 bell and you were working, you weren't guessing. So I've brought that attitude kind of into a lot of these courses, where we're going to do an evening, and then a full day the next day. So the evening is the safety, because
for sure it's important. So there's application for it.
Because despite my metaphor of taking off the safety guard, we're actually first off, as a business, we're a big believer in safety of the public, and secondly, insurance and stuff, we have to make sure.
So you're not going to just give them a grinder with no guard and a pair of gloves and tell them to figure it out?
Not this. No, I can't give them that blessing.
No, I hear you.
Yeah. So we're doing, the evening is the introduction. It's the safety orientation, and it's getting into the first steps of the project that are more or less passive. If we fail on them somewhat, it's okay. So for example, in resin, we would seal the board with resin the night before. The next day is dedicated to really getting to the nuts and bolts of it and being able to finish it. Some of these are not an evening in a full day. Most of them are. We're trying to definitely.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're trying to definitely
fit
them into
there. You managed to do
there.
this in one day in an evening. So let's say, let me pick out another one here.
Yep.
Knife making or bow making. Well, any one of these. You can do that in an evening in one day?
Bow making we should be able to do to a degree. Now, a lot of these things we have to fill in the gaps again to make them palatable for the general public. But we do also offer tiers. So to pull one out for the knife making. We could do knife making in a day. No sweat. As a kit. Even as a forging demonstration and something that we're able to finish on the back end by providing pre-finished blanks. But that's our beginner stage. Now our advanced stage is much different. We're going to get into the metallurgy of it. We're going to get into the functions and the purposes of forging techniques. We're going to get into grain optimization and refinement. We're going to get into the grinding and the mechanics of your body and how they interact with different tools. And that one's probably going to take 3 days. You know,
sure.
So some of them we're trying to definitely take that template of an evening and a day so that people can afford to say, yeah, I'll rush home after work and then come for a 3-hour episode and then plan for the next day to be.
It's a smart thing because the scheduling, like everybody's available time is already, at a premium. So this would be definitely something that I think would attract more people if they can say, okay, this is one day and it's not a week or a whole. You're not trying to learn a trade. You're just trying to learn a skill. So for sure, that's a good idea. And this is at your shop?
Yes.
In town?
Yep.
Do you offer anything remotely?
We have been contacted about some leather courses are not on here, but it's something also that we're planning to do, to come out and offer some leather courses remotely. And if there's enough interest, I think we'll do just about anything. But for the most part, we are trying to act as a hub too, and really establish ourselves as something that's stable. So the stability is definitely, that really rings solid with anybody, is something that's just stable in there. So we're focusing on that, but that doesn't mean that we're not open to doing something remotely if the numbers.
This is I can see this just you're gonna have to refine and mold and grow and see what.
I'll be honest with you, we really launched it, I'd say maybe a month and a half ago.
Wow.
We've just been nonstop. Just answering messages, emails. It's just been crazy.
No kidding.
The scheduling is nuts. Now I can feel and act important when I go, let me check my schedule.
You can actually look and see where you're available.
Right. So far, I'm just saying that day's covered, but I'm sure at some point I'll be going, my 10 o'clock, my 12 o'clock. Oh, I'm open at 1:30 for 15 minutes. But no, we're looking at already renting another space to fulfill some of the other courses so that we can hold dual. 2 courses at once of different things. So, for example, moccasin in a quieter, much cleaner environment, and knife making in the next room, where it's a bit more dirtier and a bit more hot stuff flying around. And
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, this stuff here.
Yes.
What is this?
This is just some stuff I brought here just to kind of show what it is we do in our day job. So what we're looking at here is a couple knives and some leather work. I brought by a demonstration, I guess, or a visualization of how the Damascus or pattern welded steel is made. We touched upon that back in episode 43, I believe it was. 43. We did talk about the layering and the different pattern welding and the origins of Damascus. So this is really just a visualization of the different. So here we have a stack of separate leaflets of steel.
I'm just going to do some recording here too. So that's this here.
That's that there. So that is 2 different types of steel. In this case, it's 1084 and 15N20. And then when we heat and compress those together under about 2300 degrees, we get this billet that's underneath it. And that has been forge welded. And it's just the proper term for it is a solid state weld. And then we fold that out and do whatnot, and then we come up with that knife that's in your hand. Oh, also this axe head is made out of pattern welded.
Axe head is amazing.
Yeah.
Look at the Damascus. So what is this pattern called?
That's just a random pattern. So I'm a big fan of random patterns. It just seems a bit more organic, if you will. I don't know how organic you can get with a mineral. Well, actually, that's a great segue into the some of the metallurgy that we plan on touching upon within the courses. Is that in fact a mineral is organic? Here, I'll help you out.
Okay, pull on that there. Oh, these are nice, eh?
Like if you look at a pyritic ammonite, right? It's a mineral that has overtaken an organic animal, or I guess that's redundant, an animal.
Really?
Yeah. So pyritic ammonite is super cool. What's that? Petrified wood, right? It's a mineral. Now, much like a fly compared to us, we move much slower than a fly. So, we start getting into the theory of relativity of, how we're moving super slow, but really from ours relative to us, the fly is just moving super fast.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with a mineral, right? The mineral's moving just super slow, but from the mineral's point of view, we're just moving like supersonic speeds, right?
Huh.
So iron's a mineral. And so it has a nature. It will creep and crawl and absorb and dissolve and all these things that we can do too.
One of the things I didn't realize that a fossil was I thought fossils were actually just that, the bones of whatever that fossil is, or a leaf organic material. I didn't realize that a fossil, now I should probably get fact checked on this, I guess, but it absorbs the mineral of that bone and it petrifies it in a different mineral in the shape of whatever that fossil is.
It goes
so
under.
It's not actually the residual petrified whatever. It's just different minerals taking on that form, absorbing and replacing it.
Sorry. It's taking
chemical
on
reaction.
It's taking on a phase change. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's super cool. Yeah. We have some petrified woods that we use in the shop, and they're really neat to work with. They look just like wood, but they're hard like a jewel
heavy
stone. Yeah.
Because it's a rock.
Yeah. Because that's exactly what it is.
I wonder how many people know about that.
I don't know.
It's something I just learned.
Yeah.
It's mind bending.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, well, there you go. That answered actually a lot of different questions.
Yeah.
So what do you have here for handle material like that? Show Forged in Fire. That's just a nice show to kind of reference.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are familiar with. You've got a knife here with different handle material.
Yeah, I brought.
Do you have that in your courses too?
Yeah, so like some of the resin courses and stuff like that, like that's a epoxy resin handle.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I don't know if. Let me just
Sure.
grab. So I did bring along just an alcohol bottle, and the purpose for that is because I don't want to spray it with water.
Okay, hold on. I'm just gonna record that. Let's get a close up.
But it does. It will allow us to see everything through a lens, if you will.
Wow.
And so this is an epoxy resin handle that we did produce in house, and I'll just rotate the knife here so we can see everything.
And what are you spraying on there?
This is alcohol. This is
Okay.
IPA.
I got a good shot there.
Perfect. It's dripping, but it's
That's
clean.
fine.
It's clean.
So does that fade away when it dries out again?
Yeah, but that's because it's an unfinished handle. Like when we polish that and bring it up to a proper 800 grit finish, it will keep that polish.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go a little off topic here, but
Hit me.
I want to hit you with this gift. This here is something that we were talking a little bit earlier, but the reason why I'm giving this gift is because it's something that we've given on every episode, but never recorded it. Yeah, look at that. You've got the original one from 43.
Yeah.
Love seeing that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to start giving this on air, and I'll just go. And then the few that I did, people were like, well, what are you giving your guests? You need to be a little bit more descriptive. So I'm like, yeah, you're right. You what? So there's this bag, and it's got, they're all different. But in this case, there's a couple of Kevin Unscripted T-shirts.
Can I take one out and show it?
Absolutely. What else we got in here? We've got JBL brand, Kevin Unscripted branded speaker.
Whoa.
We've got another mug. We've got all kinds of little goodies in here for the kids. So we've got suckers, Kevin Unscripted suckers. We've got silicone wristbands.
Nice. Wow,
Oh,
spoiled.
a nice little goodie bag here for you.
Spoiled.
Well, you came on, you're a repeat guest, and I appreciate it. So
Well, we
here you
might
go.
have to do a third. No, I'm just kidding.
We'll see what the third one has, eh?
Just kidding. Yeah.
For sure. Well, I do hope for a third one.
Yeah, well, thank you for this, and it's by no means required again if we do a third, but I'd love to. But I'm very grateful. Thank you very much for
It's
that.
my pleasure. My
Yeah,
pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
I may have changed it up a bit, but
I get it.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, man, this was awesome. It definitely an unscripted episode, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, doors always open, and it was a good one. Take care.
You too.
There you go.